Welcome to 44 and 1. I am GVizzle. As always, this is Tempest. And today, taking a bit of a serious note today, are we? Talking about...
addiction and stuff. Because I think there's two things that spurned the idea. Was the one that Matthew Perry has been open about his lifelong opiate addiction. And also because I'm trying to reduce my medication at the moment. So I'm getting all sorts of horrible side effects and stuff. And opiate addiction is something I've struggled with on and off for a few years now, because I've got to maintain my pain relief when I get pain flares. But then I end up getting addicted to the opiates, and then it's hard to come off them again. It's just like a cycle.
So would you start us off by kind of telling us your journey into your road to addiction and recovery?
To being a fucking addict.
I don't want to be rude about it. I don't want to be rude about it.
Yeah. And just so for everyone knows, is obviously we're close friends. We might make jokes from time to time. They're aimed at me, not addicts in general. It's
Yes,
because of the nature of our friendship. We laugh about a lot of things. So
humor is a coping mechanism.
Yeah, I fucking need it sometimes. So I just have to kind of set the perspective, the context a bit. So just to kind of find out how I ended up being an academic and stuff, because that's how it's all related. So I didn't do very well at school, and then I fucked about for a few years after school, and then I did an apprenticeship in mechanical engineering. And while I was doing that, I was in the Territorial Army, which is, well, it's not called that anymore, but it's the Army Reserves. And I was in the Royal Electrical and Mechanical Engineers. And then my plan then was, after I finished my apprenticeship, I was going to join the REME full time, so that then I can go in as like a Lance Corporal or something, because I've already got the trade qualifications, so you can go in a bit higher. But then when I was in the third year of my apprenticeship, it was 2006, I woke up in the morning on Christmas Eve and I couldn't walk. I was in that much pain. I basically slipped a disc somehow, and in my sleep. I don't know.
You're
how
a very aggressive sleeper. Apparently.
Anyway, so I tried to go to work and stuff, and it just wasn't happening. And then so the next academic year, I was like, right, so during the time of my recovery, it was just taking months and months, because it just wouldn't get better. I was like, all right, I've got to change my plan for what I want to do with my life. So I ended up doing a degree in psychology instead. And it just kind of worked from there. And then so I've basically been in pain pretty much every day of my life since Christmas Eve 2006. And it's because I've got this thing called degenerative disc disease. And that's basically, most people that get it asymptomatic, when they do like the MRI scans or whatever, the majority of people, the older you get, the more likelier it is that you have it. And it just means that your discs kind of, they lose their strength a bit, and they just go a bit sort of soft, or like they might get desiccated, so they go a bit hard, or they might just deflate a bit or whatever, or they might swell up. Like, so basically your discs aren't optimal. But for me, it's happened on several of my discs at key points. And so I've got I think it's between L3 and L4. That's right at the bottom of your back. I've got a desiccated and prolapsed disc, so that sometimes I get sciatica down my left leg. And then I've got 3 degenerated discs in my thoracic region. So that's about where your sternum is. And then sometimes it could be so bad, it feels like somebody's stabbing me in the back with like a needle or something. And it feels like it's going like right through my body. That's quite rare, but that does happen. And then because of all of this, I've got like problems in my neck and sort of like around my shoulders and the back of my head. Like with problems with all the tendons and muscles and stuff is causing a lot of pain. So the main problem I've got at the moment is with my neck, and all of this over the years, it kind of traveled up my body, so that like things just got worse higher up as my life's gone on. But I think a lot of that is because I didn't get proper support from the NHS when I was younger, and they didn't do a very good job of looking after me because I was so young. They were like, you're like in your early 20s. Why have you got this for? And a lot of people, like, I think a lot of medical professionals didn't really treat my case with the severity that it needed. So now I'm in this state.
So had it been treated differently at the beginning, could you have been in a much better state now? Like, is there...
Yeah, I think so. I think...
Can you sue them?
No. I don't think that's going to work. And it would cost a lot of money for me to do it. And I wouldn't even be sure that it happens. And that's what the NHS relies on with their malpractice stuff, is that you're either A, too ill to take legal action, or B, you're too poor.
They're probably not the only ones who rely on that.
Yeah. But the NHS specifically does. So the way I've managed it in terms of pain relief over the years, I managed to go quite a while without taking opiates. So I was trying lots of different medication, but because I was younger, I had a higher tolerance for pain and I could work through it. I mean, I did 2 degrees, my undergrad and my master's, while I was in a lot of pain, and I could still live a relatively normal life. It was just that I couldn't do too much for too long, sort of thing. I couldn't go run a marathon. And then so I just, if I was careful about what I was doing, then the pain wouldn't get too bad. But then as the years get on, you just get tireder and tireder of just being in pain every fucking day. So then eventually I had to get on opiates because I was getting some pain flares. So like a pain flare for me might last a few days or a few months. And that's just a massive increase in my pain levels. And then so I just...
You know what causes them?
Just anything, to be honest. Like when I was working at NHS England and I was doing the management scheme, I was traveling a lot. So I was spending 50% of my time in London and the rest of the time in Leeds. So that's a lot of travel between Leeds and London. And then like the classrooms you have to sit in and stuff is fucking my neck up. That, and then before that, I was a support worker with the sex offenders. And those were 13-hour shifts in the day, 11-hour shifts at night. I had to drive in the car 4 hours a day in these shitty manual stick cars. And it just fucked my neck up down here. And then that's why I'm in this position now. And and I told them I had this disability and stuff. They're like, well, we're short-staffed. You've got to do it because there's no one else that can do it. So I had to take these sex offenders to and from hospital and stuff, the secure hospital. And I was racking up, 4 or 5 hours driving a day. And then my neck just gave up. And then that's what I'm still trying to recover from now. Because after that, then I had like the leadership scheme with all the traveling right afterwards. And it was just a few years of all of that. Just eventually, just couldn't take it anymore, I think. But what should have happened is that it's kind of a bit of a crapshoot when you go to get physiotherapy as to whether the physio is going to be any good because it's the NHS. And then when you see them, they're quite low level. And then what I needed was a much more skilled physiotherapist that would understand my specific condition more. Because they were just giving me like these piece of shit exercises that didn't really do much. And and it wasn't specific to my case. And then when a couple of years ago, I went to see a sports physio, paid privately to do it, my recovery just went straight up. I just got a lot better, a lot quicker because they were actually able to understand my problem.
They customized your treatment to you.
Yeah. I had to go to a company run by the physiotherapist who's the physio for the England national rugby team. That's where I had to go to get my treatment. The NHS couldn't do it. Yeah. Fucking ridiculous. But yeah, so that's that's the issue, I think, is that there's too many people that aren't specialized enough. And then so now that's kind of the state I'm in. But,
so when did the opiate usage begin?
Let me think now. It was about 10 years ago. Or about 2011. Yeah, because I was working at university up north. So I had to teach a lot of classes, do a lot of research work. And I went to see this doctor, this local GP. And he was about to retire. And I think we mentioned this in the last episode. He was about to retire. So what he did was shove me on codeine. And I was in a lot of pain. He didn't even give me any other painkillers. Like there's like a strategy that GPs do. If somebody's coming to them with chronic pain, you don't give anybody opiates for chronic pain. You just don't do that. So I was supposed to get them for acute pain. But because he wasn't really interested in my case, he just gave me the opiates straight away, nothing else, no other treatment. And he was like, yeah, there you go. And then it just kind of progressed from there.
Okay, well, we're talking about addiction. So tell us about the progression.
Yeah, so it kind of started off like, it was all right, but I'm also autistic and I have instant gratification problems. And obviously none of that was taken into account because we didn't know I was autistic at the time. So it's kind of, so I think I got addicted to 2 things.
When were you diagnosed as
well, I don't have a diagnosis. I have psychiatrists and a counselor that told me I was autistic.
Oh.
But I didn't push for a diagnosis because of insurance companies and because I'm not on benefits. So it wouldn't there was too many risks instead of like in accustomed to the benefits.
Okay.
Yeah. And then, I mean, just for example, the government frequently talks about people who are autistic not being able to have driving licenses and having them revoked. Yeah. Yeah. That's why I won't get a diagnosis. I refuse.
That's fair. Well, let's hope they don't watch this.
Yeah. Well, no, it doesn't matter because they can't admit that. Yeah. Oh, he self-identifies as autistic. That doesn't mean anything. But yeah, no, I had a psychiatrist and a counselor tell me that, so I'm happy with that. They were like, if we tested you, you would be autistic. So I'm happy with that. There's 3 areas that I find that at the time I found was difficult not to take the tablets for. So one of them is just the fact that opiates are addictive. It took years for me to really get reliant on them, but they also feel good. And like it wasn't the euphoria that I got addicted to. It was because being autistic and not knowing it, the opiates quieted my mind down, and I wasn't so overstimulated all of the time, and they relaxed me and I could focus on what I was doing, and I would have less social anxiety. I didn't know I had social anxiety because I don't get anxious or nervous, but there's a lot of the over-analysis, the overthinking and all that sort of stuff, non-anxious symptoms of it. So like the opiates controlled all of that for me. And also it's addictive not being in pain. That
would be nice.
Yeah. And then as it progressed over time, then and then bearing in mind since 2011 and now 2022, in case anybody is a time traveler.
You're watching this from the future.
Yeah. And so I'd come off them for a long time, and then I'd go back on them if I had a pain flare, because that's what opiates are for, is the acute phase that you go through, and then you can take the opiates. But then as time went on and I got older and my back got worse, which I'll come to, like it's because I wasn't getting the physio that I needed, and I was getting fatter, I was getting unhealthier, and I was having less muscle mass compared, like my muscle to fat ratio was bad. And then so like I lost all of my strength. Bearing in mind, I used to be a mechanical engineer, I used to play rugby, I was fit enough for the army. So I was a very fit, active person who was quite strong because of my job. And then over the sort of the years, I just became like a marshmallow. And then, so the opiates then, so there was 2 reasons why I had to keep upping them every time I was on them. So one was the dependency and the tolerance. So dependency is how much your body needs it or wants it. And then the tolerance is how many you need to take to feel the same way. So like with Matthew Perry's case, he was taking 55 Vicodin at one point. That's a fuck lot. Like, I can't remember if it's oxycodone or hydrocodone.
You're just putting him in a bowl like Skittles at that point.
Yeah, exactly. Fuck me. I can't remember if it's, I need to double check something. I can't remember if it's oxycodone or hydrocodone and Vicodin. But one of them is 1.5 times stronger than morphine. And so I was on 20 morphine a day for my pain. And then if you think that Vicodin might be 1.5 times stronger, so he was taking the equivalent of like 75, 80 morphine tablets.
Fuck.
Yeah. It's a fuckload. I'll look it up later. I don't need to fact check it.
You said that like you would go off of it for a while, then go back onto it. Like, did it get progressively harder to come off of it every time? Like, how did you?
It used to. It used to be harder until I got good at coming off of it. Like, I'm not good at it. I got better at it, I should say. I'm better at coming off of it now because I know what to expect. I know how I feel. I know what my crisis points are, and so I can tell if it's about to get bad. And the problem is that they don't give you the help soon enough, and they don't really. What should happen is that as soon as you go on opiates, and if you're going to be on them for more than a month, I would say, they should be already giving you help to come off of them and teaching you what it's going to be like. But I didn't get that for like fucking 7 years. It's only a recent thing that I've got help for that. And I wasn't even pushed by anybody in the medical service. I had a doctor that said, I was living in Huddersfield, and I said to her, look, I think I'm addicted to the morphine. I want to come off of it now because I think I'm dependent now. And she said, yeah, I thought you were getting dependent looking at your thing. And she said, I was going to keep you on it for another year. That's what I would have done. And she said, because of, yeah.
Why?
Yeah. I
Like,
don't
oh,
know.
you're dependent, so let's give you another year to increase your dependency, to increase your tolerance and make it even harder for you to get off of it later. Was it just like hoping that you'd find another doctor and she'd be off the hook for it?
No, I think but she wasn't the one that was also increasing it. Like there was two doctors there that I would see depending on how busy they were. And one doctor was just upping it every time I went in. And then so when I see her, the other doctor, when she issued them, she was mainly maintaining what the other doctor had done. And then so she was like, well, I was going to give it another year and see how it panned out and all that, and then maybe do an intervention. Yeah, yeah. But the other doctor, he was like, because I was telling him about like my tolerance and how much pain I was in, and this was when I was a NHS England, and then with all the traveling, and he was like, okay, so I'll give you Zomorph, and then we'll up the Zomorph because obviously you're quite tolerant to the morphine, so we'll take the two at the same time, and then we can up the Zomorph because it's a slow release morphine, and then every time I went in, he would just give me more Zomorph.
So you were like a medically created addict.
Yeah, basically, because they didn't like. I do take responsibility for my own involvement in this. Obviously, like I also allowed myself to get into
Yes,
this.
we're not alleviating you of any of
Yeah, none of my personal guilt or responsibility for being in this state, but at the same time, the medical profession needed to be a lot more aware of what they're doing to their patients, especially ones as young as me.
It reminds me of there's a TikTok video I saw with this young girl who was clearly in crisis. She was also a recovering addict and hadn't, I forget for how long, and she went into the hospital for acute or chronic pain. She was in a shit ton of pain, and she told them specifically, don't give me narcotics because I'm an addict, and they just gave her narcotics and sent her on her way. And she waited for like 4 hours. They gave her the narcotics, and like she was recording her like, I don't want to take them because I don't want to go back into this addiction, but I'm in so much pain that I can't wait another 4 hours to get more meds in the hopes that they're not going to give me something. So she took them, and like, I don't know how she ended up now, but it's like doctors who listen, who don't take the time to clearly diagnose are they're not helping the situation.
No. Part of the problem is, again, we spoke about this a bit last week, is that there's a lack of communication between doctors and nurses and the whole system. I'll tell you how they manage that at my GP service in a minute. But also, doctors don't get much time with individual patients. They get 10 minutes with you. That's it. And if they're delayed, they're going to try and shorten that if they can, so that they can catch up with and see their other patients. And so when they see a young person coming in that is relatively healthy, they're going to like unconsciously make a lot of judgments about you. And then I think they said here that like GPs in Britain, I think every week they get over 100 pages via email of updates and changes and regulations and all that they have to read.
Wow.
Yeah. Like it's very hard for them to keep up. They're quitting by the dozen at the moment because they can't keep up with it anymore. Yeah. And they're just getting burnt out. And so like I can hear it in my doctor's voice. I mean, whenever I need to change my medication or get some extra because I overused or something, I have to have an appointment. And then we've been doing it by phone because of COVID. But you can hear it in his voice sometimes. He's exhausted. Like I feel so bad for him. And like he was like, people like have been really shit about doctors recently, just like belittling them and stuff and being nasty about them in the press and things. But my doctor, he was on the front lines in COVID, administering the vaccines and things and helping with that. He was heading it up in our local town. And so I think he was like one of the main doctors managing it all. And he was still doing his GP job at the same time.
Wow.
Yeah. And I think that the system is shit. And that's the problem. And I think if they fix the system, then it'll be a lot easier. So how they cope with doctors talking here in my GP surgery, I kind of prompted this myself. And there are GPs that don't know they can do this on their systems. But I ask them to put a flag up. So I say like, look, can you just make sure that they don't give me extra tablets by accident? Or can you ask them not to issue me any opiates until such and such a date? And then they'll put a warning flag on my profile on my online records, and then when I have an appointment, then they can check it because it comes up automatically. And like they do it with other things like allergies and stuff like that, and then they can do it with the opiates as well. What they traditionally do is they give you enough medication for say a month, and then you have to make it last a month. But I can't handle that, so I need to try and maintain like a strict way of doing it, and I find a week is better. So I get weekly prescriptions, and I get enough morphine and codeine for the whole week. And then that means if I overuse a bit for whatever reason, it might be my addiction, it might be my pain, I can't tell on a day-by-day basis, but it means it's not going to be too damaging because it's only a week. So there might be a day or two.
For a month, you could go through a month's worth in 2 weeks, and then you're fucked for 2 weeks.
Probably in a week or a few days when it was really bad. When my morphine was at its worst, I could go through it in a week or a few days. But like, yeah, it's because I should.
And then with the doctors, sorry,
that's right.
If you went through a month's worth in a few days, would your doctor give you more? Would you have to suck it up? Would you go seek out another doctor to get a different prescription? Like, how would that?
I'd probably have to go to a different entire county to get it done. It'd be very hard to fake who I am. I've never done that, and I'm not entirely sure how someone would do it because I've interacted with health services so much that I wouldn't like, because of the way the procedure is, I don't know how I could do that.
We did talk about that before. Like, it would be in Canada, I think it would be really easy to med shop because you just go to different walk-in clinics and the different pharmacies, and
you can only get issued morphine in certain places, and it has to be by a doctor. So a nurse can give you codeine, but only so much, and a doctor could be the only one to issue morphine, and you can't get it in A&E. So if you go to A&E, sometimes drug seekers go there because it's easier for them, and then it's easier to fake yourself, but then they will refuse to issue it. They say like, look, your leg's not falling off, like this isn't really an accident and emergency thing. But like you can go to a walk-in clinic, but then the alarm bells go off because they're like, hey, you're asking for morphine, so you have to prove somehow that your GP specifically has given you morphine before.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so you have to go in with like the last box that you had, and then it'll see when it's issued. But in my case, do you know, I don't think now I'm revisiting it. I've never actually had to go in and say, look, I've used up all my morphine in a few days. Now that I'm saying it, I don't remember what happened if I did that. But I know that if I overuse it too much and I need the prescription early, then some doctors will issue it anyway. But the way that I've got this relationship developed with my doctor now is he knows he can't do that. He knows that he shouldn't, because we have a really open relationship there. And so and then we'll always have a talk as well. Like if I have overuse, he'll ask me why, he'll get me to explain it, and he'll go over what's going to happen and all that stuff. So, and then there has been times where he's refused to do it because I asked him to when I was not dependent. So, yeah. So it's about being honest with yourself and with your doctor, really, because at the end of the day, they can't leave you in withdrawal. So they might give you some more, but less than you would have had before. So
to ease off the withdrawal symptoms.
Yeah, that sort of thing. Yeah.
So will you ever get to a place where, I mean, your chronic pain's not going anywhere? So how are you going to manage that going forward? Or are you always going to be struggling with using it and then coming off of the opiates, going back on, coming back off? Like, is there a long-term solution for you?
I think with my specific condition, I actually think it will get better at some point. I think the reason why I got into the state I was in was because I wasn't doing any exercise. I was putting on weight. I mean, I got up to 220 pounds, and even now, just losing 20 pounds of that, I feel so much better already, even though it still hurts. But carrying less weight, particularly around my stomach, because that was, I think, putting pressure on my
pressure off of your spinal limb.
Yeah, exactly. And just doing exercises, building up my muscle mass in my neck, and my shoulders, and then so. Well, I've been going through a pain for it. I haven't been able to do it for a couple of months. But while I was doing the kettlebells, I was just focusing mostly on core work and down my back and my sides. And then that was improving it as well. Because what I need to do is add muscles around my spine so that the muscles are taking the weight and not my spinal cord, not the vertebrae, sorry. And then what's happened with my neck, that I've got actually a fairly decent physio at the moment, and he's an NHS one too. So it's a surprise. I was so skeptical when I first went to see him. I was like, no, not this again. But he was actually quite good. He said that what usually happens is, that he said, he sees a lot of patients with my neck problems. And he said, it's with like the deep muscles, like right inside your neck. And then, so like if you're twisting and turning and all of that, or working at your desk, he says, then they will get inflamed and they will hurt. So you just need to do things to make those muscles stronger. Because for me, it almost feels like where the muscles attach at the base of your skull, that's where I get a lot of the pain at the moment. So I think it's fixable. But the problem with morphine use is that it does a few things to you when you've been taking it for a long time. And this is why I would say to anybody, if you have to take morphine for an acute problem, make sure you only take it for say 3 months. Don't take it any longer than that if you can't, if you can help it. Obviously, individual condition, because this happens. And some of the problems is that it makes you, like, you might not feel it, but it does make you more lethargic. It makes you care less. You just don't care about stuff as much, which was bad for me anyway as my autism. There's like stuff I just didn't care about, and I didn't care about before, and so I care even less now. So it makes you a bit lethargic, but also it's a muscle relaxant in a way. And so that's bad for my back condition. That if I'm relaxing my muscles all the time, what's that going to do to my spine?
Is there any surgical intervention you could do for your spine?
Yeah, but because of...
Would you be like Doc Ock from Spider-Man?
yeah. They can do cool stuff, but my back would have to be worse than it is for them to warrant it at my age.
So they have to wait for you to get older and heal not as fast and be less spry before they'll
Yeah. But it's because of the risks of doing it, though, because they have to, like... So with my prolapsed desiccated disc, they'd have to take it out and then put in a Teflon disc. And so there's a risk of paralysis. Yeah.
They'd be non-stick.
Yeah. Which is what we all want, really. Work for Donald. But the other thing they can do is they can put like these bars in to kind of hold the vertebrae apart so there's less pressure on the disc. But you have to be careful with that, I think, because like you don't want, like, if the vertebrae can't handle it, then they'll crumble and break and stuff. So there's risks there. But then the other thing is like when you're taking all the morphine, so like you got the muscle relaxant and but also it affects your pain threshold and your perceptions of pain. So objectively speaking, I might not actually have a problem in my neck. It might just be the tenseness and stress from all of the opiate use and from like trying to earn money and be in pain all the time and that. And it might also be because my brain thinks I'm in pain. So like it might just be like a little neck ache and I might be perfectly all right. But my brain thinks
pussy.
yeah, my brain's turned me into a giant pussy. So like and then, because bearing in mind what I was saying earlier, that when this first happened, I had a huge pain threshold. Like it wouldn't bother me, whatever it was. And then, like, I was fucking writing essays at uni and with, like, sciatica, sitting in a desk, writing an essay for 6 hours. I can't do that now.
What sucks for getting older is that your pain threshold goes down. Like, I remember getting, like, tattooed when I was younger and pierced when I was younger, and it was like, I'd be fine that same day. And then I was, like, 40 plus getting a tattoo, and for 4 days, I was like, oh.
Yeah, exactly. It hurts.
I got my ear pierced for like 2 months. I was like, I couldn't even use a phone. I was like,
I remember when I got pierced up here because I wanted to scaffold, and then when he was pierced a bit at the back, I can't even see my ear because of my hair. He's pierced here, so it's just cartilage, and he had to really ram it through. He's like, "Argh!" And then he went through, and I was just sitting there, just as if nothing was happening, and he was like, "Wow, you took that well."
I had like, I forget what the thing is, the tragus. I can't remember what it was. I had this little nubby bit pierced when I was, I don't know, 30-ish.
Yeah.
And perfectly fine. And like, that's a thick piece. Sadly, I had to take it out a couple years ago. But then like 5 years ago, I got this one pierced, which should be easy.
Yeah.
Cried about it for like a month.
That's hilarious. Well, I did something stupid though when I had it done. Is that night I jumped in a mosh pit. And somebody just went whack right on my ear.
Well, after I got this one, because I got this one done in Vancouver, it was like to commemorate my trip to Vancouver. And then I was like, this is going to be fun on an airplane, right? And he was like, I was like, okay.
What could possibly go wrong on an airplane?
I think it was like the pressure. the pressure could potentially cause it to like hurt more.
Oh,
I don't
okay.
know. It was a long time ago.
That's weird. I hadn't thought about that. But yeah, it's definitely been a journey coming off of it. I've never really judged people who are addicts anyway, just because so much circumstances involved. But I have a lot more compassion for them now, because what I go through is such a small part of addiction that I'm just basically a classical case of someone who lives with pain every day, and they just get themselves into a spot of bother because for healthcare problems. Yeah.
Your addiction is a spot of bother.
Yeah, a British understatement. That's it. That was a British understatement there for you. And like, addiction is also, I'd say it's the great leveler. Other people think it's other things, but I think it's addiction. That when you're sitting there in the drug and alcohol service, right, and then you could be fucking anybody, right, and then you're sitting there with all these other people. There's like an old lady there that she just wanted to take some Solpadeine and ease her aching bones at night with a gin, and now she's a drug addict. And then you've got people there who have had really difficult, horrific lives, and now they're trying to get off of heroin. And and then you've got people like me who are just there for chronic pain, or some bloke who's, I don't know, like got some high-powered CEO job and he got addicted because he was taking substances to keep himself going.
No one ever thinks it's going to happen to them until it does. And it's so nefarious. I think one of the like I'm a sucker for horror movies, but I think the scariest movie I've ever seen is Requiem for a Dream. It's based on a book by Hubert Selby Jr. The book is amazing, but the movie, it's got Ellen Burstyn and Jared Leto. I think it's Marlon Wayans. I can't remember. And Jennifer Connelly. And it's just, you're watching these four people descend into addiction, right? Like Jared Leto, Jennifer Connelly, and Marlon Wayans are all friends. They're all into heroin, and like how that descends for them. But then Jared Leto's mom gets this thing in the mail that she's going to be on this game show. So she wants to lose weight to get on this game show. So she orders these like diet pills that are just speed. And she, unbeknownst to herself, just becomes a speed addict. And like, it's just so like just how anybody at any time, right? Like the right or wrong set of circumstances can just fuck your whole life. Right? Like, and you don't mean it. Like no one starts it expecting to become
I want to be a drug addict.
Yeah, it's just one thing leads to another. Or you try a thing and then.
Well, one of the most nefarious ones that I've heard about, and this is I don't know if you have it in Canada, but it was in America, and I could never understand how people could get addicted to it, because our drug I'm going to talk about doesn't work that way in our country. So you've heard the old thing about housewives getting addicted to cough mixture?
No.
It was used to be in like American shows back in the 90s and stuff. And
they had alcohol in those.
No, it was they had codeine in it. And they didn't tell anybody. Like, I don't think they really told people, and people didn't know it was addictive.
I do remember they had codeine and cough medicine, and like mouthwashes had alcohol in them. So like someone my mom knows, her husband was like a hardcore alcoholic, that they would take all the alcohol out of the house and she would find him like guzzling perfume because it had alcohol in it. Like he'd be drinking mouthwash just to get that alcohol hit.
Yeah, totally. And it's, people don't understand what it's like. I mean, I think the best way I could think of that would apply to the most people, okay, of what it feels like when you're craving something. It's like needing a pee really badly, but you're not allowed to go. Like you have to hold it. Like there's no option. You have to hold it in until you wet yourself. Do you know how hard that is? That's what craving feels like to me.
Well, I mean, I have wet myself. So.
Yeah. I was going to say you'd be a shit addict, but then actually you'd be a good addict, but that would be bad for you.
It would be terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I used to when I used to walk Zool in the ravine, I used to pack toilet paper with me because I knew I wouldn't be able to hold it, and I would just pee in the ravine. It was compostable, biodegradable. It was helpful for the environment.
But look, working in urology, I found out a way of dealing with that. Apparently, just the random tidbits you pick up working in these places is that what you need to do is when you need to go, time it so that you leave it at like 30 seconds or a minute longer each time, and then you have to be consistent with it. And then your bladder will expand, it'll get used to it, and then it'll stretch, and you'll be able to hold bigger amounts eventually. It takes a while, but yeah.
But I mean, it's not like you can do that infinitely.
No. There's like an upper level, but like if you're getting to the point where you're trying to go take your dog for a walk for like half an hour, but you can't make it back in case you wet yourself, then this is good practice for it.
My problem has always been because I would walk the dogs at lunchtime. So like before lunchtime, I would have like 2 cups of coffee, and then I would be like, oh, my mouth is hot, I should drink some water. And then I would pee, and we'd leave for a walk, and we'd be like, this is before we got Gozer. It's so much easier now because I walk Gozer, I come home, I pee, and I take Zool. But when I was just walking Zool, we would go for these like long walks. So then I'd be like,
yeah, I
peed in the ravine so often that even now, if I take her into the ravine, and we don't go in there as often as we used to, but she'd get to the spot where I used to go, and she would just start heading in there. And I'm like, not today, baby. I'm fine today.
That's adorable. But it's like, I think anybody would wet themselves with that amount of coffee and water.
Because we've spoken about how you are reducing your dosage. So where are you? Are you coming off of it? How does that feel for you? Like, what are you going through physically, mentally?
Okay. So right now, I take in, the week before last, per week, I was taking 21 morphine tablets, and
a day, a week?
A week.
So 3 a day.
Yeah. And but some days are more, some days are less. It depends on how the day goes. And then I also take 116. Hang on, can't remember how many it is. Wait there, because I take codeine as well, because of my tolerance. And I drop the morphine, but I still have the codeine, so I still have opiates in my system. It just helps me come off of it easier. So I take 112 codeine tablets a week and 21 morphine tablets. So last week I dropped 7 of my morphine tablets, so I take 14 this week, and 112 codeine. But because I've been on the other tablets so long, any reduction felt bad. And then because your body is used to a certain amount of opiates in the system, so that if you take enough of that away, like I took 1/3 of my morphine away in 1 week, that's pretty significant for your body. And so that basically meant that I'd feel agitated quite easily or irritated quite easily. One of the things I think you would notice the other day is that when we were texting, I was perfectly chill, but the way my texts look, if I go back and read them, my texts look like I'm annoyed. Yeah. So but I was fine, and I think it's because I can't control my autism as well. So because I'm tired, I'm worn out, because I feel nauseous all the time. I feel like I get like, when you get a hangover and you just feel empty and shaky. Yeah, I feel like that all the time. And basically headaches and stuff, and light sensitivity, and like it's all quite mild in addict terms compared to what a heroin addict would go through. But you go through it for like weeks on end as you're reducing it, and then just as my body's getting used to the reduction, I have to reduce it again. So then I'm going to go through it all again. Like, so now I'm fine because my body's used to the reduction and I'm not as bad. But then tomorrow I start reducing it again, and then so I'm going to go through that all again.
Why do it so quickly? Like, why not give your body a little bit of time at this dosage, and then, because you just got through the shakiness, the irritability, all that stuff. Like, why not just be like, just give me 2 weeks of this before?
I need to do these things quickly because of my my pain flares, and I don't know when the next one might be, even if I have one. So I want to get it down as much as possible before my next pain flare, because then I'd have to increase it again to manage the pain flare. But then I'll have to increase it less because I've already reduced loads of it. And also because of just the way that I am, I find it easier to get it done and out the way. I would rather take this horrible hit now rather than doing it slowly over months, because that's what I was trying to do. but it led me nowhere because I'd keep going back up again anyway. So it's like, and so I just, and also I've got a dentist appointment in January, which might hurt my neck. So I want to get off of these tablets as much as possible before January the 3rd on my dentist appointment, because it means then that like all the pain sensitivity and all of the other stuff that the morphine's doing to me isn't going to be as big a problem. And I might actually get through this dentist appointment with hardly any pain at all, I'm hoping.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. Yeah. But
Did
yeah.
you also reduce the codeine? Like, do you start with are you getting off of the codeine or the morphine, and then will you start with the codeine, or is codeine?
No.
So do you want to get to a spot where you're not taking anything?
Yeah. So because morphine's the way it works is you take the codeine and it metabolizes into morphine. Your liver changes it. So technically you're taking morphine still. It's just a small amount. And the reason why I've got the codeine is just because of when I was coming off of it before, I got rid of the morphine and then I switched to codeine to continue reducing. But then I got a pain flare. So I just, because my tolerance was still there, I had just to put morphine on top of the codeine. But codeine is about, the ratio is between 1 to 6 or 1 to 10. So for every milligram of morphine, it's 10 milligrams of codeine. That's the ratio. And then I'm taking doses of 60 milligrams of codeine with 10 milligrams of morphine.
And you're taking 112 codeine a week. So when it comes to reducing that, what's that going to look like? Because you went from 21 morphine to 14 morphine. Like, what is 112 codeine drop down to?
Yeah, I think I'll probably just reduce it by 30 milligrams every few days, or 60 milligrams a week, and just do the same again. So what I find is that if you take big jumps early on, it's easier, and then you can just taper it off, so that like the jumps get smaller as you go on. So by the time I get to the codeine, then it might take me a few more weeks, but it'll take about this. I'm thinking I could do it in about 4 weeks, maybe 5.
But then if you get let's say you're 3 weeks in and you get another pain flare, then you're back on morphine and back on.
Yeah, it's about how it is over time. Okay, so like it'll go up and down, but overall the trend is down. So where I'll be taking more than I did, like say the week before I had the pain flare, then I have the pain flare and it'll be more than that week before, but it will be less than when I started reducing it.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So you're kind of like taking steps down. Because I've still got to manage the pain, otherwise the pain gets worse. So it's about balancing it all. But there's a lot of psychological things when you're trying to come off of it. And like that's harder than the physical stuff. Like all of us have been ill at some point. We've all had stomach bugs or had the shit. I mean, the other day, actually, for people to laugh about, like 2-3 days after I started taking less morphine, and I text you about it, and I had like 4 shits in like 3 hours.
Yeah, that was appreciated. Thanks for that.
Well, I'll send you the pictures next time. I think you'd like to see them.
That would be the end of this little experiment.
But yeah, it is. It's but I think the hardest thing for me personally is just having the medication in the house, right? And how do I not take it if I'm in pain? And then having to sit there in pain.
How do you not take it? Right? It's like people with having like crisps, chips in the house.
It's exactly the same. Yeah. It's exactly like that. It's
what's that self-talk look like for you?
A few years ago, it was like, just fucking take it. And then I would take it and then I'd run out of tablets. But then what it looks like now, because I've learned a lot and I've progressed in my recovery and things, is that one of the things I push on people to tell them that'll help them is this book about teaching yourself CBT. I forget who wrote it now, but it's a way of thinking to help you break down your problems, to understand your thought processes, to figure out why you did or said that thing. And then, so if I figure out like, okay, what are my warning signs that I want to take my tablet? What do I have to do to stop me taking them? What would help and what would work? And I just kind of talk yourself out of it, and like the things that work best for me are distraction. Going for a walk, playing a computer game, That's why I find reading so hard at the moment, because I can read and think at the same time. So it's very hard for me to distract myself when I'm reading a book. And it's like, comes back to this toilet thing again, right? That this bladder analogy is that when you first need to go to the toilet, if you distract yourself, the need goes after 5 minutes. Then you forget about it and you do something else, and then you take your dog for a walk and piss yourself. I
pee twice before I go for walks.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
But still.
yeah, it still happens. Yeah, so I just kind of, so if you can distract yourself, then that's probably the best thing that you can do.
But you can only do that so long before.
Yeah. And then sometimes you have to accept your fate, just that, like, this is the way it is. I can't do anything about it. And remind yourself that I'm not going to get better unless I stop taking them. Because at least, I don't know how much of a percentage it is, but there is at least a percentage of my pain that is because I'm intolerant to pain because of morphine. So, and I don't know how big that is. Cycle. Yeah. So and that's where the chronic pain's different to the acute pain, you see. So the chronic pain I've got in my neck, there's going to be a certain amount of that that's because of the morphine. And then it's just a matter of, I have to come off the morphine to find out how much that is. And then once I find out what it is, then it changes the state of play and I can focus on it. But right now there's no room to focus on anything because I just want tablets. And I think it also, how successful these strategies are depends on why you're addicted as well, and how motivated you are to get rid of your addiction. So at the moment, I'm highly motivated, so it's easier for me not to take it. But in the past, that wasn't always true. And depending on how bad, like, I'm not really a depressive person, but if I just feel a bit sort of low energy, then it becomes very hard to resist the ability to get rid of the pain. But the other thing is like, there are a lot of people who are addicts who they're trying to get rid of their psychic pain. And it's very hard not to, like, if you're taking drugs as an escape, it's going to be very hard not to take them unless you've got like good support circles and good structures in place and things to kind of help your life get better. But that all needs to be in place almost before you start coming off of it, which is hard to do if you're a heroin addict.
Physical pain is physical pain, but emotional and psychic pain is a much deeper issue.
And I think that over the years, as I've come to terms with being autistic and my childhood trauma and accepting a lot of things, actually coming off my tablets is a lot easier now, because I've got rid of that component of where I would want the opiates in addition to get rid of my back pain. They would help me cope with my autism, and I don't need that as much. And I think just going back to that, what I was saying earlier, I got distracted with myself, but how like withdrawal is one of the issues I have with it, is it drops my filters and it drops my ability to communicate with people, because I get much more plainly spoken and I'm a lot more blunt with how I deliver things, and I'm less capable of seeing the other person's point of view quickly enough. So like, for example, like if I send something as a text and I go and I read everything I sent, and then most of the time I'll be like, oh wait, no, that looks snarky, I didn't mean it like that, and I'll re-explain myself, right? But then when I'm in withdrawal, I'm less able to do that because I don't have the resources, and I'm not even aware that I've done it until it's too late. And then when I realized the other day that you're getting annoyed, and I'm like, oh, I stuck my foot in it, haven't I? and then but it wasn't until you called me out on it and said, look, what do you want from me? And then it took until then for me to realize that you were annoyed, which isn't. And like, but then
I wasn't annoyed. It was kind of circular. That I was like, are you looking for a different answer here, my guy? Because you're not going to get
Yeah. It's just, I was trying to figure out why you were thinking what you were thinking, and I wanted to understand your perspective, but my choice of words and my delivery was so bad because I was being super autistic. That like, I didn't have my Chris translator on, my universal translator. and then I was just like, yeah, nah, that's. But like, talking here now, face to face, is so much easier for me because I can see in your face what my words are doing to you, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, it makes it so much easier. But
there was a There was a study by something Mahabrian, who studied the effect of tone, body language, and word choice on the messaging. And if you are face to face with somebody, the majority of how your message is being received is through your body language and tone, and not so much the words that you're using. Whereas if you're on like the phone or on text or something else, then it becomes like 93% tone and 7% word choice, where like what you're saying is almost completely irrelevant. It's like when you talk to a dog, for lack of a better word, right? Like I can, because dogs understand, they don't understand the words you're saying, they understand the way that you're saying them. So I could like look Gozer in the face and be like, "You're a stupid, shitty motherfucker, aren't you, baby? Aren't you, baby?" And he'll be like, "Yes, I am." Versus if I were to be like, "I love you," then he'd be like, "Ugh." Right? So
don't love me, please don't.
So, you know, it comes across very differently based on when you can, which is why I think like there needs to be like, now people use like different emojis or like \s to indicate they're being sarcastic, because if you just read something, you don't know how it's come across or how the tone is.
I'm in two minds about it, because I think if you teach people to be open-minded and stuff and accepting of others, like we have a laugh about it. And like I have to find that like we'd have far fewer stories if we put backslash s or something on the end of things, because then we wouldn't be able to have a funny story for the podcast. And it's just a short moment of pain while I piss you off, and then you're fine afterwards.
It's not even this, it's that I'm still coming to terms with the fact that sarcasm sometimes eludes you.
Yeah. Well,
because that's my love language, is sarcasm.
I think it's just it's over text that's difficult. And also, even if I know you're being sarcastic, I have an impulse to answer seriously. I don't know why. And I do think it must be autism. Like, because it's like, oh, haha, that is funny, sarcasm is hilarious. But then it's like my academic brain goes, yeah, but did you know?
Yeah, it's like every time I see your little fucking icon, your profile picture come up on one of my kick-ass facts posts, I'm like, what's this bitch got to say now?
Yeah.
Like, actually,
I'm just going to stop engaging with your content then. Fuck you.
I don't need you.
I need you, though. I've only got 2,500 followers. We have a power imbalance in our friendship. But yeah, so going back to like the recovery stuff, one of the things that I don't know if they have it in other countries, but what we have in the NHS is a thing called a pain clinic. So for people who are struggling to live with chronic pain, and then when you go there, I didn't really find it useful myself. But I think it's because of the level that they were pitching at and the work I'd already done in other counseling and therapy sessions for other reasons. I had a lot of skills to transfer from that other therapists had already taught me. But if you're new to chronic pain and you're struggling with it, the pain clinic is definitely the way to go. And if you've definitely never done any therapy before, it's definitely going to be useful. And you basically go see like a counselor, for want of a better word. And then they just kind of show you, they give you like learning materials and things and help you understand what your pain means for you and helping you accept the situation that you're in. But then also how to live on a day-to-day basis with the pain. What are some things that you can do to psychologically and emotionally cope with just this fact that you've basically got a constant headache 24/7? That
sounds exhausting. I can see why it would be so easy to turn to medical intervention.
Yeah. And then like one of the things that I struggle with is nighttime. Like if I can't sleep, I've managed to not take any medication at night for well over a year now, but it is definitely my weak point where I was focused most on stopping. Just lying in bed, like with what you could feel, feels like a migraine coming on or something, or you got sciatica and stuff. I think there was a time where I spent about 6 months sleeping on the sofa but sitting up because I couldn't physically lie down with my neck because it would give me migraines in my sleep. I'd wake up in constant headaches. Yeah. It's very boring. And then I watched like there's this YouTube channel called the Great War Channel, and it's about World War I, and it's like 10-minute episodes every day of just that day in World War One. I watched it like 3 times through because I just couldn't sleep.
Wow.
Yeah. They have a lot of episodes.
At least you're entertained.
Yeah. Indy Nidell, he's a fucking legend. I love the bloke. He got me through some tough times. But I tell you, one of the weirdest side effects I had is from Zomorph when I was taking a lot of it with the morphine as well. And I'd sleepwalk. And it was creepy as fuck. Like, I managed to record myself one day. And I was like on my computer. And then I was just sort of like sitting there like this at my computer desk. But then I keep doing that and falling asleep and getting back up and just doing that. But I thought I was asleep. I was in the sofa asleep to start with, and I got out of the sofa and just sat at my computer desk.
I used to sleepwalk when I was a kid.
Yeah, same. Yeah. Wake up in weird positions. The most painful one I had. So I went through this weird phase of getting out of, like, not when I was a kid. This was when I was on the Zomorph, and I just stand in the middle of like the bedroom, creepy as fuck, right? And I just stand there. But then as my body kind of properly falls back asleep, I'd start to fall over, which would properly wake me up. And I grab something and crash into the wardrobe or something. And then my partner wakes up shitting herself. Like, what the fuck is going on? The worst one was I fell back, I was standing up, I fell back asleep, fell backwards, tripped over the ottoman, and just landed on the corner of the foot post on the bed. Yeah.
Jesus.
And I had this black bruise all down my side. So bad.
Mine never, but I had a dream once, and I used to be afraid of our basement when I was a kid because I had convinced myself that like ghosts and stuff were living in the laundry room, and I had to like pass the laundry room to get upstairs. So I used to hate it at night. Like I'd turn off, because I would watch horror movies all night. I would turn off the lights and then haul ass up the stairs like I was on fire to get out of there. And then one day I woke up at like, I guess I had a dream that my mom told me to go to the basement to get socks for my dad. So I woke up at like 4 o'clock in the morning, standing at the foot of their bed with like 4 pairs of socks.
See you later.
And then once my brother was, I guess when I fell asleep, my dad was in the bathroom. My brother was watching TV on the main floor, and I came downstairs and I like turned into the living room, and I went, Dad's in the bathroom. And then I went into our main floor bathroom, and he just started to hear this weird noise. And when he walked into the bathroom, I was standing there in the dark, just like pumping the soap dispenser. And he was like, "Hey, let's get you back to bed."
Demon child.
So, sir, what's next for you?
I'm gonna make a really bad joke.
In terms of your recovery, what's next for you?
I was going to make such a bad joke, but I won't. It's going to be really tasteless. But yeah. Are
you going to blame your recovery for that? Oh, I've lost my filter. I can be shitty.
This is one of the things I find hard to talk about with people to get them to understand. And like my addiction is one of them. That like a lot of stuff is a reason for the way that I might be or other addicts might be, but it's not an excuse. Like, it's not excusing any bad behavior that I might do, but it is the reason for it. But then a reason rather than an excuse means that I'm still responsible for my actions, you know. I
think that's a good distinct. Like, I think that's an important distinction, because a lot of people, I mean, there is a big difference between a reason and an excuse, right? And like, it's also about the aftermath of, like, if you were just to say absolve yourself of any responsibility for anything that comes out of your mouth because of that, then that's I don't know where I'm going.
No, I think you're right, because
I don't know where I was going with that.
No, I think I know. Like it because if you say things in a way that absolves you of responsibility, first of all, you're not going to learn from your experiences. And secondly, what about the people that you might have created as victims throughout your actions? You know, even with little things. Whether it's just like me being a dick in a text message to you, or maybe accidentally jumping in front of somebody in a queue or something. Or I don't know, I can't really think of anything small, but like, you know, going from that to actually creating a proper victim, like say there are drug addicts who might steal their parents' money out of their purse or something. You know, their circumstances have helped generate their behavior, but they're still making the conscious choice to then go and do that. Every time I overuse my medication to get rid of my pain, that is a choice that I'm making. There are modifying factors in the likelihood I'll make a better choice, but it's still me that's doing the choice. No one else is giving me these things.
And I think that makes a good point, is that in like dealing with, I think when you're easy to say like, oh, it's my addiction, that was the reason for that, then you're not taking the accountability. And like in the moment, it may not feel like a choice, right? It may feel like I have to do this thing, but taking that step back and saying like, yes, if once you can say, yes, I made the choice to do that, then it's easier to make a different choice or think about that choice or take accountability for that choice that will then lead you on that road to recovery, because then you are saying, I am ultimately responsible for this, versus it was outside sources that did this to me instead of something that I did to myself.
And that is what a lot of the pain clinic stuff can be about. And that's what a lot of the stuff I learned at the addiction clinic too, is about getting that responsibility and taking the responsibility for yourself, changing the locus of control, which is something that they say in psychology. So an external locus of control is all of this has happened around me, and then that's why I'm doing this. An internal locus of control is accepting that those things have happened, but I'm still the agent of change in my own life.
And I think that's how you drive change, right? Like for me, when I was smoking, it was a very unusual circumstance because I just had a cigarette, tasted like shit. I was like, oh, I guess I'm not smoking anymore. And I haven't smoked in like 14 years. But like my husband, when he quit, for him, it would have been really easy for him to say like my addiction is taking over and I started smoking. But he was like, no, I have to choose to have that cigarette. And I know it's a very different circumstance because the level of addiction.
No, not at all.
But like for him, that was how he got through it, was like, I chose to quit. So then I have to be the one to choose to light up again. And it's for anything, right? Like when I lost weight, I had to choose to eat differently. I had to choose to say no to things that I had previously enjoyed so that I could take control of them.
Yeah. And actually, just to put that right of what you said about the smoking thing and it not being the same, it is worse, actually. Nicotine is the most addictive substance you can get addicted to. And it's the hardest thing to quit out of all of them, out of all drugs.
I'm still floored that I would say I quit 2 or 3 times. Like the first time I quit kind of accidentally. I had a really, really terrible case of strep throat, and like smoking just physically caused me agony. So by the time I got over the strep throat, I was like, oh, I guess I'm not gonna smoke anymore. And because everyone was like, I'm proud of you for quitting smoking. And I was like, oh, okay, I guess I quit then. And then, and then I thought I could be a social smoker, and it took half a cigarette, and I was back to it a day. Like that was it. And like, I know that about myself now. Like the last time I quit was that, like, it tasted terrible. I put the cigarette out. I was like, okay, I think I'm finished. And even though I was 33 when I quit. I'm 48 now. Yeah. So even though it's been 15 years since I quit, I still know it would take one.
Yeah, totally.
And I'd be back to it back a day.
Yeah. And compare that to morphine, where I would have to be on morphine for well over a month before I start getting addicted. Not addicted like I am, but it's starting the process of the addiction and the tolerance and dependency. But you just have half a cigarette and then you're back to square one with it. Whereas opiates don't work like that. And that's why it's easier to manage, in my opinion anyway, certainly my experience, it's much easier to manage a morphine addiction than it is a nicotine addiction. Yeah. So, well done to your husband.
He can be a social smoker. So he can go out for a night, have a couple of cigarettes, and
God, I can do that. I mean, I don't smoke and I never have done, but apart from Canadians' favorite thing to smoke, but it's illegal here.
So I mean, it's that a lot of people have different opinions, but it's not addictive. But
I think what is addictive in a sense about it is the lifestyle that you generate on it and the effects of it. I think they can be satisfying enough to make you want more of it, but it's not addictive like a substance would be. It's not like a physical dependency.
Although people who have stopped have had get nightmares, or not nightmares, but like very, very vivid dreams when they've smoked for a long time and then stopped smoking. Like the dreams are pretty intense.
Yeah. And my mum used to get weird dreams on Nicorette patches, actually. So she used to get horrible nightmares on those when she was trying to quit smoking. Yeah.
I never tried I never needed to try the patches. I had a friend of mine who was, she was very slender. So when she tried the patches, she put them on her shoulder, like where they told her to put it on. But because she was so slender and like too much nicotine was like getting into her system. So she's like, I had to like slap it on my ass because
That's what you say. That's what you say.
I needed more of a barrier to like ease the influx of nicotine into her system.
Yeah. Fucking hell.
This has been a very interesting topic today.
Yeah, I'm sure there's like, if people have questions, they can just ask. Like I don't really have I don't find it difficult to talk about, I think. I don't know why I've always been like that. But
no, you were very, very candid and open. Much appreciated.
I think that has been actually one of the barriers to me getting good healthcare, is that I have such a shallow affect that I just go in and I just talk like this to the doctor, and then they don't realize that I'm actually suffering really badly. And then, but it doesn't, because I'm not a typical patient, so they can't compute. They're like, oh, he's a young guy, he sounds fine.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think movies have kind of made us think that someone suffering from withdrawal would be, you know, sweaty and twitchy, and you know, but withdrawal comes in all shapes.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is as well, like that would be like somebody who is going through cold turkey and they're on heroin. Like you can have like seizures and everything. It's fucking horrific. But like what happens to me is that I do get like temperature fluctuation problems. I do get sweaty, a bit clammy, but it doesn't last long. It lasts like a day or two. And then
it sounds like you're a menopausal woman getting hot flashes.
Yeah. I woke up like, is it middle of the night the other day, and I was just drenched in sweat, just like, just because of the withdrawal, like the first day or two. I was just sweating, but I was in my sleep, and then obviously the duvet was heating me up, and I was asleep, so I didn't know. Yeah, that's what happened. Yeah, I was like, what? But yeah, and then and my body, I think it's an autism thing as well. Like one of my many autism symptoms is that my body is bad at regulating temperature anyway. So it just kind of makes it a lot worse.
Is that typical with autism?
It can be. It's because autism so messy and so individual, but there is a correlation between things like, you know, like over or under sensory perceptions, temperature dysregulation, and all that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Age of Black.
Yeah.
And if you are struggling with addiction and you need to seek out support, we're putting up some resources that are available to you maybe in your country. We don't know where you're watching or listening from.
Yeah, we'll put it in the description, and I'll put up the CBT book as well.